So today we are going to bring life back into this very dark image in Lightroom, and then I'm going to move over to Photoshop. The first thing we want to do is bring up our shadows a bit. See? Now all of a sudden, little Emily here has a face. And then you could bring the exposure up a little bit. We could also do that in Photoshop after we're done here. And now mind you, this is a raw file, which makes all the difference in the world. If you don't have raw, then what happens is you end up with a lot of noise when you brighten a very dark image. So, and I'm actually going to pull this down just a little bit, bring back some shadows. Take a little bit of black and bring it back. I don't want to bring back too much black, but, and depending, if you have a lot of highlights, see how this is all blown out. I pull these down, and then the whites down. These are my favorite. Highlights down, shadows up, whites down, and then blacks down just a little bit. And then, if you want to, sometimes I'll do this, I'll bring in a little bit more color with the saturation. And then just adjust it till it looks about right. And already we have like a magnificent picture. So I'm going to export this so that I can save it to, let's just save it to our desktop. And I will select folder, and I'm not going to rename it. Just got to check this stuff here. Okay. And I'm going to leave my image pretty big. This will take a second to export, and in the meantime, we will go to Photoshop. Okay, so now we're in Photoshop. I'm going to open my image, which is on the desktop somewhere. There we go. So now we want to create some creamy skin tones. So, what's wrong with my window? I'm not sure. Okay, so we're also going to edit this in Photoshop. And what we're going to do is, first we're going to do a little selective color. I'm using CS6, or actually it's Creative Cloud, but it's a little bit like CS6. But you can use just about any Photoshop version. And then we just fuss around with the color a little bit. I usually take the cyans down a little bit and then work the yellows whichever way I feel more comfortable. She's still a little bit dark, but so now I'm going to go to color balance, and I'm only going to go to highlights. And this brings in that creamy tone. And under highlights, I only use the yellow and the red, or cyan and red. And then you just kind of fluctuate until you get that nice creamy skin tone. And I usually do this. I hit both of them, and then I select both of them, and then I hit Control-G. That makes me a nice little group. So then I can see the difference. And you can already see she's shaping up to be a good-looking little girl. Alright, so I'm going to flatten this. I don't like to get too many crazy layers. And then like a little bit of brightness and contrast. Now, sometimes I don't really like, sometimes I don't like the brightness to be all around there. So what I'll do is I'll hit my mask, click my mask, and then hit Control-I, and then that will allow me to take my mask and just brush. Oops. But now I have a black mask. I want to make sure I paint in white on that black mask, and then that will, see how her face is coming alive. Just gonna bring this up a little bit, make my brush a little bigger. And it's a little bit of a process to get everything exactly how you want to get it. I'll touch and play. And I usually always do a little filter, blur, gloss and blur on my masks, just so it's not like, you can't really see it right now. But see the edges here? We don't want them really stark edges. We want it to like fan out a little bit. So if I miss the little piece, it'll blend. And if it's too dark or too light or you're not happy with it. Now see, now that I brightened her a bit, I want to go back to the same. I go under selective color and I click neutrals. Under here you have red, white, neutrals. I always click that. And then sometimes I'll go back and I'll bring in the more color, because sometimes when I brighten her, I lose her pretty color. And I'll, you know, sometimes during this process I'll do this 2 or 3 times. After I do one process, I come back if her skin color changes a little, or if I run some kind of an action. So that's pretty much it, just to brighten it. As far as all the other editing goes, I added a gradient, just like a white gradient, and I did like a reverse gradient and then scaled this up a little more. And then what happens is when I do that, and then what I'll do is you can actually move these. You double click on them, move it over, so she's kind of, I think I actually blew out my edges. I blew out my whites a little bit more on the other version so that this was more disappeared. But again, see, it's on her face too much and I don't like that. So I'm going to paint this with black. Remember, white mask, paint black, black mask, you paint white. And then I can get this off her a little bit. And then we're going to do the gloss and blur again, because we want this to naturally fade. That's the trick I found to masks, is to make them naturally fade, is just do a little bit of gloss and blur. And then it doesn't look so gloss and blur. And then it fades in a little better. And depending on how much you want, brings back in. I guess that'll do for now. And then let's say that this is what we want for now. We'll just flatten the image. I like to do that. And then if you want to, like, run like a skin smoother, I have a skin smoother in one of my sets that I use. And I just wash around her face, and then I also have an eye action in there. And my eye action, oh, and my Lush lashes, love that freaking, I love that action because I can sharpen the lashes and make them like really bold and stand out. You have to be really careful on little children and babies because sometimes, you know, it looks like they have mascara on and you don't want it to be mascara. And please hold while this takes a moment to process, unfortunately. But your biggest thing is shooting raw, and in Lightroom, brighten your shadows and bring up your exposure just a little bit. And then when you bring it into Photoshop to create the creamy skin tone, you use the selective color, only editing the gray channel and doing the cyan and yellow channels. And then you do, again, you do color balance on the highlight channel. That's the ticket. And sometimes, you know, you need to do it several times. Okay, so now we're on this. We want to click on our mask. And, you know, depending how I feel and depending on the picture, just kind of, and if you can't see this, sometimes I'll do like a multiply so I can see where I'm adding it. Now, of course, it's not going to look like this because I just put this on multiply just so I can see where I'm painting. It's another little trick I use. And so, I mean, we're just going to do a little quick job here on her face. Get rid of her little... Because, you know, babies are supposed to have, like, perfectly smooth skin. At least you think that, right? till you see baby up close, and then you realize they don't really have perfect skin. But that's okay. She does have perfect skin, though. This is just a preliminary. See, I always do a little filter, gloss and blur, remember, on all my masks. I won't do it that much. And be careful when you do this, like around the eyes. You always want to go back with a brush, opposite brush, and then brush it around their eyes just in case. So you get like a haze over their eyes. Okay, now we're going to go back to that. Okay, so you can see. Made her skin look a lot better. Of course, it's a little too obvious that I did that, so I'm going to bring it down just a little bit. 11 is a little... I actually did her arms and stuff in the other version, but I'm not going to do that now just to save time. So, sometimes I do a little contour on the face, which I love this. And usually I just duplicate it because I need a... The directions tell you to use dodge and burn. I actually don't use that anymore. I actually just use black. Black for the... That's a little dark. Is that back? Okay. Opacity is just a little too strong. Oops. Did not mean to do that. I'm a little crazy here. So you just kind of darken the areas that are dark, and sometimes I go around. She doesn't really need that that much. This is great for like teenagers and stuff. And then again, we do filter, gloss, and blur. Or Gaussian. I always call it Gaussian. And then we just pull it down just so it's real subtle. Okay, it's so subtle I can't even see it. Okay. Yeah, it's just very subtle. It's not meant to be... It's just a way to make their face pop a little bit. And then I just do it a little bit on the bridge of the nose and up here. And around the eyes. Down here. A little bit there. Now I'll do a little bit filter blur. Gaussian blur. And again, you don't want to leave it at 100%, so we just pull it way down. Just so it's... Okay. So we have those. I'll show you what that looks like. See, it's very subtle. I mean, I could probably go down a little bit more on this. It doesn't need to be very much. It's just a tad. And then I always add a little bit of blush, because that just looks great. I don't know why I add blush. I think it just makes it look more complete. Okay, so, oops. You gotta make sure you're on the mask when you're painting and not on the picture itself. And then make sure you're using the opposite color of what your mask is. There we go. Just paint on a little bit of filter blur, gloss and blur, Gaussian blur, a little bit. Okay. So, see, we have a little bit of blush. A little too much, so we'll just tail it down. Doesn't have to be a lot. Just enough to where you barely notice it. Okay. So, now I'm going to do Lush lashes. I love Lush lashes. And probably a little bit of Amazing Eye Color. Gotta be really careful with this Amazing Eye Color because it's like... You don't want to make the eyes look too fake. And she already has a lot of sun in her eyes. Little sunlight sparkles. So I want to bring my brush down. I'm going to use a white brush because our mask is black over here. But this will brighten and lighten her eyes a little bit. See, they're too fake. We don't want that. So we just pull this down, way down. I got this, 19? Yeah. It's just enough. Can't really tell, but it's done. Okay, so now I want to get her little eyelashes. And I'm going to take my little brush way down to the size of like an eyelash. And see, I'm on the Lush lashes. And then I just start painting her eyelashes. And what this does is it adds a lot of contrast to the eyelashes and makes them stand out. If you do it really bold on someone who has makeup on but you can't really tell, it's amazing. It's pretty forgiving too. So I my opacity down a lot. And I just brush over them. She has like the perfect eyelashes. Now see over here where it kind of smudged? You have to be really careful over here. She don't want it to look fake. Anyhow, that's pretty close to the edit. I mean, it's a little more, I think I need to bring this down a lot. Yeah, down. And our blush is still there. And our lush lashes, and our amazing eye color, our naturally perfect face. And so, that's pretty much how I edited this picture. There was probably a few more steps, and I took a lot more detail, but you can see how, let me see if I can find the original here so we can have a little before and after. Where is it? Let's see. Pictures. Edits. There we go. Here's the before. Oh yes, and I cropped this picture also. Oops. So here is our before, and there's our after. Who would have thought I could take such a dark, terrible shot, really, and make it that? It's amazing, isn't it? Okay. So that's it, guys. Good luck.